Hey passengers, welcome aboard this Chalupa Airlines flight. Today I'll be showing you how to do a cold and dark startup of the stock A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. And then I'll show you how to load a basic flight plan and go through the taxi procedure, all the way up to engine startup and taxi. First thing we need to do is go to the overhead panel. You'll see this button here that says External Power, EXT Power. Click on that. That gets electrical going into the plane. And then we'll begin by turning on the batteries. Batteries 1 and 2 are on. Fuel pump's on. And for this aircraft, since it isn't study level, that's basically all you have to do in the first part. The other things, which you'd find like the FlyByWire mod, much more detailed. But today, we really don't do as much as that. Turn on your nav lights and set the strobe to auto. Turn the beacon on because you'll be ready to taxi. And then we can go to the flight computer. So everything is set. I like to use SimBrief as my flight planning tool for Flight Simulator and X-Plane. And today we're going to load a basic flight plan from Myrtle Beach to Charleston. So you're going to follow a simple procedure that Airbus pilots follow. It's called diffstrip. Data, init, perf, flight plan, and then secondary flight plan, radio, init B, and then perf. So DIF SRIP, diffstrip. Click on the init tab. This is where you're going to enter in your flight information. We're at Myrtle Beach, where it's KMYR. So you type in KMYR / Charleston Airport ICAO is KCHS. So I enter that in. You're going to click on the button next to the from and to. That will load it into the flight plan. Click the return button. And you can also make a flight number, for example, Chalupa Airlines flight 3536. It will load that as well into the flight computer. The cost index button is how fuel efficient you want your flight to be. The computer will make adjustments with the engines to make that happen. 100 is the least fuel efficient, so you get there the fastest, and 1 is the most fuel efficient, so it's the slowest. I usually fly with the cost index at 100 because I'm not paying for gas in the flight simulator. Cruising flight level to Charleston, they tend to give us a flight level of 8,000 feet, so it's very low, so you put in 8,000 feet, that's your altitude. And from there, we go into the flight plan page. So diff flight plan. What you're going to do first is set your departure waypoint. So you click on the airport that you're starting at, KMYR. Click Departure. We'll be departing on runway 36 today. And if you have any standard departure waypoints that you need to track, sometimes the larger airports have these, and you would find them on this page. Myrtle Beach does not have that, so we're going to click Insert. Then we set the arrival waypoints. Our destination is Charleston, so you click on the destination, click on Arrival, select your approach, we'll do ILS 15. See the stars here, this is standard arrival, approach waypoints. We're doing none of those today, so we're just going to hit Insert. Then you can see it's populated all of the approach waypoints into the FMS here. And then you can enter in various waypoints as well. So if I wanted to add more waypoints, since Ashley here is the approach waypoint, I'd have other ones before that. So you want to add waypoints into your flight plan, you click on the KMYR, your starting waypoint, and you're going to click, you see this next waypoint icon here? We're going to be using this. So you're going to input the next waypoint. And I know a couple waypoints we're going to go to, so typically you'd find this in the flight planner, but just for today we're keeping it basic. So that's one waypoint for me, plan. Then you're going to hit insert. It's going to put the waypoint in there where it needs to be, right after KMYR 36. Now after plan, there's an airway that I want to go on. Like I said, keeping it basic today, I don't want to explain too much, just showing you how to get this thing started. So airways are an easy way to get a bunch of waypoints without having to type in like 5 waypoints. You can use an airway. It's like a highway in the sky. So V1 is an airway to Charleston. And I know the exit waypoint is Carno, C-A-R-N-O. Sometimes the simulator will not find these waypoints. It just depends on the data that's loaded into the simulator. And there we go. So it's loaded in the airway for one waypoint on my flight plan. If you don't want to load airways, you can simply type in all your next waypoints into here. You just will have to go plan and then type in your next waypoint, which could be Wando. Click on Wando, type the next waypoint. Or perhaps you could type in this. It won't let me do it on this one. So you'll have to do it this way. You're clicking on the waypoint, then you're typing in the next waypoint, and then you're clicking insert. So that's how you load your flight plan. Then you go to radios. We don't have to think about that too much in the simulator. Then we go to Init, and we're going to push the right button. That's Init B. This is where you can modify your zero fuel weight and the center of gravity, as well as how much fuel you have. Because this is the basic flight simulator stock A320, it's not study level. A lot of this is preloaded. You don't have to think about it. Last page is Perf. This is where you would set the V speeds for takeoff, as well as the flap configuration. V speeds, you can look them up online for the weight of your plane. So you type in A320 V speeds, and it would give you a chart with the weights and the particular V speeds. So today my V speeds are here. Lastly, we have the flaps/THS. You could also find this online, this information. For me today, it is flaps2/DN0.0. So that's takeoff. On this perf page, you're going to click next phase, climb. You'll see that it's managing a climb speed of 172 knots. You could modify that if you want. You could type in something totally different. You could change it to selected 250 knots. That would override the managed. But for today, I don't want that, so I'm just going to remove that. Next phase, cruise. It says, since we're going to be at 8,000 feet, we're really capped at 250 knots. Descent, it's going to descend at 242 knots. Once again, you could change that. Approach. You would set your approach data on this phase. So the altimeter in Charleston is 30.05. The temperature in Charleston is 27 degrees Celsius. And the winds are 050 at 05. You'd find this information on your flight planner. Decision height for my runway is 200. You can set your landing configuration here as well. Next phase, we go around. Don't have to think much about that either. So with that information in there, your flight plan is ready to go. When you pull up to the cockpit screen here, you'll see your flight plan loaded in the middle, the second screen next to the attitude indicator. You can change the look of it to plan, and then you can view the entire plan by ranging out to about however many miles. You can see all of the waypoints loaded in there. And so that looks good to me. Next thing I'll do is set the altitude. My cruising flight level is 8,000 feet. My flight director, turn that on. And you're really ready to go. this point. Now we just need to get ready to do taxi. So, beacons on, alerting everybody to taxi. This is the one last important step. You can do this at the beginning or at the end, doesn't really matter because we're sim pilots. Turn the APU on. Push the master switch on, right here. And then after 5 seconds, you're going to hit the start button. You can also turn the seatbelt sign on and the no smoking sign on, or auto. Now the APU is going to start. You need the APU to start the engines. And also when you start taxiing, your external power gets disconnected, so you need power for your plane. The APU is critical. If you ever pull out of the gate and your plane just shuts off, it's the APU not being on. So, wait for the APU to start up. There's no screen showing, since this is the basic model, it won't show us when the APU is ready. But it usually takes about 10 to 20 seconds. Once that's ready, we can call ground for taxiing. Let's pull up the ATC, tune Myrtle Beach ground, and then we're going to use ground services. Request pushback.
Myrtle Beach ground, Airbus Alpha Sierra X-Ray 320 requesting pushback.
Airbus Alpha Sierra X-Ray 320 pushback request accepted.
Next thing we can do is turn on the APU bleed. Since it says APU is now available, you wait to see the green lights say available, turn on APU bleed. Now you're hearing air coming into the cabin. That's a good sign. Turn off external power. Pushback will begin. Once you see the plane starting to move, your parking brake is still engaged, so we need to disengage it. Now we're moving. As we're pushing back, you have to time it right with the radio comms. So I want the plane to be steered to the right, so it can face left. Yep, that's what I want.
Myrtle Beach ground, Airbus Alpha Sierra X-Ray 320 requesting pushback tug to steer the aircraft to the right.
So
Airbus
steering
Alpha
the
Sierra
tail
X-Ray
to the
320,
right.
your request has been transmitted to the operator.
Eventually, you'll have to get this to stop and time it just right. This looks good.
Myrtle Beach ground, Airbus Alpha Sierra X-Ray 320 requesting the end of pushback.
Airbus Alpha Sierra X-Ray 320 request to end pushback received.
Alright, now that we've pushed back from the gate, you can engage the parking brake. While that's going on, that pushback's going on, you could start the engines. But I didn't want to do that for y'all. Don't want to rush things here. The APU bleed is on. That's good. We would typically turn off the air conditioning packs in the real aircraft, but you don't have to do that. So really all you have to do is this. Go to the throttle quadrant and select from normal mode to ignition start. Then you click to start one of the engines by clicking on engine 1 or engine 2. Start with engine 1. As you're doing that, the center screen begins to show you N2 is spooling up. Once that gets to about 25%, the engine will start. Something I realized with this plane, I have to make sure that the throttle is definitely at idle, my throttle, because sometimes it kicks into 100% when I don't want to. And settle in about 20% here. And then you can start engine 2. Same process. N2 begins spooling up on engine 2. And engine 2 is now ready. You'll know that both engines are ready when they're equal in percentage on M1. They should be equal. At this point, you're ready to taxi. So we would turn off the APU because the engines are now running. APU bleed is off, APU is off. Then you would turn on the taxi light. Now you're ready to taxi. Just disengage the parking brake and then begin taxiing at about 30 to 40% of M1. Try and taxi around 25 miles an hour. We're almost ready for takeoff. Engage the parking brake. Looking at the overhead panel, turn the landing lights on. Set the nose to take off. Turn the wing lights on. Strobe is set to auto, so it should be strobing now. One last thing, make sure your altimeter is set to the local setting. It is 3005 right now. You can find that at the ATIS, the Airport Information System. And once this is ready, a few other checks. You want to set the auto brake to max and make sure your flaps are set for takeoff. And in my case, I'm doing flap setting 2. Make sure the spoilers are armed, so pull that up. You see a white indicator there when it's armed. And lastly, the engines should be set to normal mode, not start. Disengage the parking brake, accelerate, line up with the center of the runway. You'll spool up the engines to about 40%, and then looking at the attitude indicator, the left side here where it says CLB, climb, and nav, this little square on the left, you're looking to set the throttle at managed mode. So watch this. We're going to accelerate to 40% of M1. Hold that. You want to see both of the engines stabilize at 40%. They look stable. Now we're going to accelerate to manage takeoff mode, which is right about there. You see man flex plus 20 on the lower left or upper left of that screen. That tells you are in auto throttle mode. Manage takeoff. Now just hold the center line until you get to your V speed, which is 145 feet. V1, pull up 10 degrees. Holding 10 degrees.
Airbus 320, you are not cleared to take off.
And then gear up. Then you would engage the autopilot if you are going to fly managed. The last thing you would do after takeoff, it says lever climb in the upper left there. You're going to pull the throttle lever back until it says throttle climb. Since I'm on flaps 2, I will begin pulling the flaps up just as I level off here. The plane is tracking the flight plan. Now's a good time to go flaps up. Plane begins to accelerate, and both flaps have gone up. This concludes the tutorial of how to go from a cold and dark startup into taking off the stock A320 in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you on another future Chalupa Airlines flight. So thanks for flying with Chalupa Airlines, America's favorite regional airliner.